Yeah, so since we looked at these five points now, like unplanned town, and then we looked at a planned town, a multifocal town, and a walled town, and a bridge town. So this is the previous medieval ages of what towns were being planned. Now we are going to actually study about a little bit of case studies of very different towns, which we can see now. So basically, this is something called as the Ferrara. So as you can see in the name, it's kind of close to Ferrari because it's an Italian town which was one of the very first towns to be planned. Okay, there was a very good family or a king family or a queen's family. They had the castle in the middle, and the castle was surrounded by the town itself. And that's how it's originated, and that's how it's told. So if you can see on the right hand side text, okay, the Italian Rossetti him prepared a plan for rebuilding the city of Ferrara. So basically, what were they looking at in doing or rebuilding? If I can ask, they were looking at widening the major streets, erection of new buildings, and improving the encircling wall around the city, which is called as the fortification wall, which every city had in the previous ages, and this also the city also had. Now, he also made a plan for enlarging the town. So basically, future extension he was planning to more than double its size. Let's say for the next century, no, next 10 centuries or next 10 decades, he was planning for 1 century or 10 centuries. So how can he like start enlarging the plan, man, to for the future extension like this? So basically, he started out with specified gates. Okay, so he put the gates very far away. So those gates meant the perimeter of the particular city. Then the roads connected to that particular gates. So we automatically got a gate and a road which brought us from the gate inside the town or the city. Now, then he later planned in different parts the plazas and the key buildings, which were split and they were put in a staggered form. They were not put in a particular axis and things like that. Now, we'll see that in the next few slides. Now, he planned three new broad streets for the extension. Now, this was the interesting thing which we wanted to note because uh, how do we plan nowadays is that we zone things. We start with zoning and we put we got government rules which says here is where you need to be, there is where you need to be. Okay, so here's where the MIG, that's where the HIG and the LIG kind of stuff. Now we did not. Now these people, if we are going to be living in the Ferrara and we are going to be planning, we did not actually have so much of community and stuff like that where we can do a big hierarchy. We just had religion, we just had Christianity, and we just had the church, which was the best thing, and then the queen and the king's palace, which had a little bit of hierarchy, not too much. So what these guys did plan is that they started off with the making of broader streets. Broader streets were a very good thing which happened in like the past 10 centuries, because some cities are now thriving with the streets which were marked during the 10th century AD. For example, the New York's square and the St. Peter's square in Italy. If you see, these were not being changed, but they were just existing as they were for so many centuries previously in history because they were planned very well. They gave a lot of space. Now, that was the type of amount of extension, or that was the type of idea which took to the rebuilding of Ferrara. Now, I'll send you videos for this. You can see how this city looked nowadays and how it's packed and jam packed by tourists and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. So three main streets were being formed, and one of these went along the east-west, connecting the new town, which went along the east-west, connecting the new town and then connecting the new town with the old, and then the other two at right angles, which divided the city into four. So basically, this was one street, and this was two. I'll show on the next slides. This plan was provided for a loose framework around which the town would grow in a logical way. Still, it was not a very good framework which this guy had been planning, Italian Rossetti. But he or they or them, they were planning it in a way that it did not make any good strengthened framework, but it was logically growing around the city. If you have space in the next plot, you can just go build the house. After that, you can have the space and build the house like that. Now, these are the three streets which they say it cut the city into different parts, different zones. Okay, as you can see, there is one line which is going here. Okay, this is the east and the west line, and these are cutting them in 90 degrees, like literally close to 19 degrees, where they create a trapezoidal form, a triangle, a trapezoid here, and again a quadrilateral triangle and stuff like that around the city. Now, this is the wall which they had built very previously. Still, the city, if you can see, the city which were existing was the green color which we are seeing now, but the walls were built away from this green color road, from this particular road. Let's say 10 kilometers or 5 kilometers this side, and this side, if you can say, 2 kilometers. So this was how future was being planned for extension for these particular cities. Okay, and this green structure or the green layout was the layout which was very previously coming into place, where it had most of the main buildings which consisted of the palaces, which consisted of the cathedrals, the churches, the marketplace. And this particular green zone consisted of, now see why I'm using a word zone is that now we are using zone as a word of explanation for these particular things, like how they were zoned, because it's easy to understand. If we are going to look at how they were planning with the streets, they would have called this as the main street, and right hand side to the main street would have been the older city, and left hand side to the main street would have been the newer city. Now that's a lot of confusion. So zoning led to a lot of easier understanding of how cities were being planned. Okay, so next part. Okay, the green part is what was existing with most of the new buildings. Okay, next part is the extension of the city which this guy had planned, where that particular extension of the city had important buildings, had parks, had open gathering spaces. Okay, had monasteries which were becoming smaller. Churches were split into different sects and different orders of churches which were being planned in different parts of this particular city. So basically, the ideology of one person in the green zone would have been changing with the ideology of another person in the yellow zone. Okay, as you can see, the yellow zone and the green zone. See the central axis. This particular road which goes, this particular road is coming from the main gate into the main city. Okay, and then these two roads come from these gates. Okay, but if you can see here, wherever this junction happens, there's a lot of cluster of public commercial happening. Again, this junction happens, there's a lot of cluster of public and commercial happening. Now this was the now this was the interesting factor, because without knowing by themselves, they had created public and commercial sectors right along those main roads, or those three streets which they had made for the city, which was actually what they meant to. Okay, which was actually what was happening in their plan, which they did not know. And automatically, when somebody drew the plan in the end, they came to know that okay, everything of importance is there on the main streets. Okay, so that's what happened with these cities. Now, after that came the third extension on the other side. Now, why this third extension came? Now, the third extension was basically near the fortification wall, because this third extension consisted of the garrisons, okay, the garages of weaponry, soldiers, and a little bit of taller buildings where it could actually give a good view outside the particular wall. So this was how the third extension came out to be, and then the other extensions were coming in, which were taking a good form. If you can see here, it is still not having a grid pattern or something like that. Here it's organic. But when we look at something here, when we look at something on the bottom, what is happening here, it's having a perfect grid pattern with rectangular and gardens and stuff like that. So this was the very new form of expansion of this particular city. Okay, the city of Ferrara. Yeah. Now this is another interesting thing which we can learn. So what happened is architect Fontana. Okay, architect Fontana. He was so his plan for Rome was one of the most iconic plans which he had shown. So basically, yes, this was what was shown in the I think Tom Hanks and the Da Vinci Code. So basically, if you can see in the second point, he connected the shrines and other monuments by a network of streets and also earmarked the key points of the city with tall obelisks. So basically, monuments and tall statues and obelisks were being focalized for connecting the roads. Now, previously in Ferrara, they did not connect roads like that. They just laid the roads. But what Fontana did is he connected the roads with shrines and very focal key points which existed in the particular city. Okay, so the obelisks were to act as guiding points to the city plan and serve as strong visual landmarks. Okay, in the jumble of hills and ruins that was in the old city of Rome. Yeah, now city of Ferrara was a flat city. Okay, we are talking about a very flat geographical feature which extended like this. Here, like they tell, Rome is not a flat structure. Rome is ups and downs and hills and things like that. So, how can someone follow a city's guidance? How can someone follow a city's visual guidance? Is by keeping the important buildings in the important places where it is easily viewable. This is what he did. Now, if you come here, okay. Now, this is a serious explanation, and this is a very beautiful explanation of how okay Fontana's plan executed. Now, architect Fontana is displayed in a mural in the Vatican. Okay, he's a very famous person. He connected the shrines and other monuments by a network of streets, and also marked the key points of the city hall. Yes, with the obelisks, which were the obelisks were left by the Roman Empire, and then he used them, and then started building the streets and the walls. I mean, streets and the connectivities. Now, in this way, he ensured that the new streets would not only connect the key hubs but also were visually emphasized. Yes. Now, this is where an architect's real aesthetical thinking came into play. Now, he did not only look in for connecting the key hubs, okay, the key or the the most crowded or the most heated up, the most thermally thermally sensible hubs. He was also trying to visually connect these places from one perspective and the other perspective. Okay, so let's see the red color what we have here. The red lines mark the axes of the main view or the focal points of buildings. Now here is St. Peter's, and St. Peter's is in line with like one, two, three, four other monuments and obelisks. Here, if you see this line, we got like one and two obelisks. I think it's the Colosseum and the other thing. And here, if we see, we have this particular view which comes down here. Now this picture is not in this picture we can see a lot of other smaller focal points. So here still we have this map is a little bit tilted, so don't get confused. This is the St. Peter Square, and then it comes over here, and then we have this whole city having new focal points which are connected by mainly the monumental structures and the monumental structures and this particular obelisks which were existing in this particular city. Okay, so next I will run into the next thing in the next 15 minutes. So this is what we need to learn something beautiful about the city of Ferrara, and some some architect called Fontana who was looking at how to aesthetically connect the points in between a city. So this was how urban planning really ranged up, and it became very important for planning of any city after that.